Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 8, Text 21, which is in here somewhere, I'm sure. So this is, beautiful chapter. It's entitled Lord Krishna Shows His Universal Form. And of course, you've all been reading this, but it's just for myself. I'd kind of like to recap a little bit. So Krishna was born and he was moved to Nandagram to be raised by Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. And the great sage came there, Garga Muni. And so immediately Nanda Maharaj asked him that you please perform the name-giving ceremony for my son. But he said, well, I'm the priest of the Yadu dynasty, so if I perform a name-giving ceremony, then everyone will know that this is that boy that Kamsa has heard about. So I better not do that, it would be too dangerous. So Nanda Maharaj said, well then let's just do it secretly. Let's just do it quietly in the cowshed. So he agreed and gave the boy his name, and not only, actually both boys, Krishna and Balaram. He said this child, the son of Rohini, will give all happiness to his relatives and friends by his transcendental qualities. Therefore, he will be known as Rama. Often in Bhagavatam, when Balaram is addressed, it's usually Rama. He's addressed as Rama Krishna. And because he will manifest extraordinary bodily strength, he will also be known as Balaram. And Krishna, he says, your son Krishna appears as an incarnation in every millennium. Whoa. In the past, he assumed 3 different colors. Of course, this is a famous verse which indirectly predicts the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, who's in a yellow color. So he says he appeared in white, red, and yellow, and now he has appeared in a blackish color. And so he concluded that, he said, for many reasons, this beautiful son of yours sometimes appears previously as the son of Vasudeva. Therefore, those who are learned sometimes call this child Vasudeva. For this son of yours, there are many forms and names according to his transcendental qualities and activities. These are known to me, but people in general do not understand them. To increase the transcendental bliss of the cowherd men of Gokula, this child will always act auspiciously for you. And by his grace only, you will surpass all difficulties. O Nanda Maharaj, as recorded in history, when there was an irregular, incapable government, I think we're due now, Indra having been dethroned and people were being harassed and disturbed by thieves, this child appeared in order to protect the people and enable them to flourish. And he curbed the rogues and thieves. He says demons cannot harm him. So finally he can, in conclusion, therefore, O Nanda Maharaj, this child of yours is as good as Narayan. in his transcendental qualities, opulence, name, fame, and influence. He is exactly like Narayan. You should all raise this child very carefully and cautiously. So then he went away. Now we have this wonderful verse. So the boys began to grow and crawl around and manifest many wonderful activities. So this section of Bhagavatam especially is about, you could say, about Salyavas. And in this verse, Nanda Maharaj is especially glorified. So we can read this. Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Ramakeshavo Janubhyam Saha Panibhyam Ringamano Vijaratu Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Ramakeshavo Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vijaratu Kalena Vrajataplena Gokule Ramakeshavo Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vrajaratu
Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Ramakeshavo Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vijaratu Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Ramakeshavo Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vijaratu.
Ladies.
Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Ramakeshavo Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vijaratu
Kalena Vrajatalpena
Gokule Ramakeshavo
Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vijaratu Kalena of time Vrajata passing Apena a very small duration Gokule in Gokula Vrajadam Ramakeshavo both Lord Balaram and Krishna Janubhyam by the strength of their knees Sahapanibhyam resting on their hands Ringamano crawling Vrajaratu enjoyed childhood play. After a short time passed, both brothers, Rama and Krishna, began to crawl on the ground of Vraja with the strength of their hands and knees, and thus enjoy their childhood play. Purport. One Brahmana devotee says, Shrutim apare smritim itare bharatam anye bhajantu bhavabhita aham ihanandam vande yasya linde param brahma. Let others, fearing material existence, worship the Vedas, the Vedic supplementary Puranas, and the Mahabharata. But I shall worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard the Supreme Brahman is crawling. For a highly exalted devotee, Kaivalya, merging into the existence of the Supreme, appears no better than hell, Narake. But here, one can simply think of the crawling of Krishna and Balaram in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. Isn't that nice? One can simply think of the crawling of Krishna and Balaram in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj and always merge in transcendental happiness. As long as one is absorbed in thoughts of Krishna Leela, especially Krishna's childhood pastimes, as Parikshit Maharaj desired to be, one is always merged in actual Kaivalya. Therefore, Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Sattvata Samhitam. Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of Narada, so that anyone can take advantage of this literature, think of Krishna's pastimes, and always be liberated. And it's interesting, this verse that Prabhupada quotes at the beginning of the purport, he again quotes for emphasis, I guess. Shrutim apare smritim itare bharatam anye bhajantu bhavabhita aham ihanandam vande Yashalinde Param Brahma. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Nalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Maro Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shirda Varakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagritatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakam Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrijavanusuti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasitaya Shikarani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I wanted to find out where this verse was that Prabhupada quotes, and I did a little research, and I found something really interesting that I think you'll like. I hope you'll like. Oops, guess I gotta keep these on. So this verse is, we don't actually know who spoke it, but Rupa Goswami includes it in his Padavali. And it was also spoken in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Raghupati Upadhyay. So he recited this verse also. But what I found out is there's a place in Vrindavan called Nandavan. This is the forest it's a special forest where Nanda Maharaj goes. He gets away there. He goes and hides in this forest because he's got a lot of responsibilities, right? He's got a kingdom, and he's got a lot of cows. How many cows does anybody know?
900,000.
900,000. So anyway, so he's busy. He's a busy man. And of course he's a pure soul, he's a transcendentalist, but he's always absorbed in thinking of Krishna. But he wants to get away sometimes from his responsibilities. So he goes to this place, Nandavan, which is named after him. And there he engages in his sadhana. He meditates. And so it says that, even though he's always thinking of Krishna, he thinks of himself as an ordinary cowherd person, so he has to go there to meditate. So it said that he chants his Diksha mantra, which I don't know what that is, but if I had to guess, I think it would be something like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he meditates on Lord Narayan. This is his sadhana. But as soon as his mind gets fixed on Lord Narayan, he just starts thinking of Krishna. He just can't not think of Krishna. So I'll just read this because it's so beautiful. The king of Vraj, wrapped in love for his son, was naturally absorbed in the ultimate goal of life, Sri Krishna. Still, Nanda thought himself an ordinary cowherd and wanted to pursue self-realization. Nanda Raj would thus make time to visit this forest which bears his name. He would sit here in seclusion, chant his Diksha mantra, and meditate upon the Supreme Lord Narayan. As soon as he was absorbed in thoughts of Vishnu, however, the forearmed form of the Lord would transform into that of his son. And Nanda Maharaj would be swept away in remembrance of Krishna's pranks. After some time, Nanda would notice his mind had drifted. Has that ever happened to you? Sometimes they're if only our minds would drift like this. It's so beautiful. So he noticed his thoughts would drift from Vishnu. Thinking himself inattentive in japa, he would again bring his mind back to the Lord of Vaikuntha. But no matter how hard and how many times he tried, his thoughts of Narayan would transformed into thoughts of Krishna. Despite the bliss he felt, he worried that he was neglecting his sadhana. While facing such difficulties, Nanda Maharaj would suddenly remember the words of Gargamuni, which we just heard, right? Which was that thinking, his Lord Narayan and his son were the same, right? So he would think, Gargamuni's words, "O king, this child of yours is as good as Narayan." So he would think, if my son is as good as Lord Narayan, Nanda Maharaj would think, thinking about him is also as good as thinking about Narayan. His mind pacified, the king would plunge into thoughts of Krishna. Absorbed in Krishna's pastimes as a child, boy, and youth, Nanda Maharaj would lose himself in the bliss of Krishna Smaranam. His Diksha mantra was abandoned in favor of Krishna Nam Sankirtan. So beautiful, isn't it? And then the author quotes this verse. So Let's look at this verse a little bit. Shrutim apare. Some people worship, it said here, bhajantu, they worship the scriptures. They worship the Shruti, the original Vedas, the Smriti, corollaries, or the Bhagavatam, for instance. And Bharatam, they worship the Mahabharata. And it says here, why do they worship these literatures? Bhavabhita, because they're in fear of material existence. So this is the general case. This is our case, probably. We're in fear of material existence, which is, in one sense, a good thing, because conditioned souls were either thinking about it, enjoying material life, in which case there's no problem. Prabhupada at one time told us, the trouble with you boys and girls is that you're not afraid of Maya. So life is good, no worries. So either we're like that or we're afraid of something. Pretty much mostly, the conditioned soul is plagued by fear. Constantly plagued by fear. But in one sense, that's a good kind of basic motivation, because then we turn to the scriptures. We try to understand. We worship Bhajantu. We worship the scriptures. We hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear all these things. Gradually, we come to understand that we're not this material body, we're a spiritual being. Actually, as we practice Krishna consciousness, if we chant attentively and associate nicely with devotees, we come to actually perceive that we're not the body. We can actually see, I'm sitting in here, looking out of these eyes, but I'm not this body. So this is a nice beginning. And it's by the grace of devotional service, it's by the grace of these scriptures that we can actually begin to perceive that we're a spiritual being. But there's a higher stage. So therefore he says, I worship Nanda Maharaj, Yasyalinde Param Brahma, in whose courtyard the supreme absolute truth, Param Brahma. He doesn't call them Krishna. Interesting. He calls them Param Brahma. He's in his courtyard. So there's something to notice here also, that the author is not saying that people are studying the scriptures and this is preliminary, but I worship Krishna. He doesn't say that. I worship Krishna. I heard something, actually, Maharaj mentioned this to me the other day, so maybe the locals have heard this, but bears hearing again. He said that, I think Bharijana Prabhu had written a poem for Srila Prabhupada, and at the end of each line of the poem, he said, I just want to become a devotee, or something like that, which sounds like a nice humble sentiment that please let me become a devotee. But Prabhupada actually said, very nice poem, but you have to change the last line. He said, we just want to serve a devotee. We just, we don't even imagine that we're devotees, but if we can somehow or other serve a devotee. So it's very interesting in this verse also, the poet, whoever he is, doesn't say, I'm a devotee of Krishna. He says, I worship Nanda Maharaj. I just think of Nanda Maharaj, how fortunate he is. We hear this, we think of how Nanda Maharaj is so fortunate, how he's just thinking of his son, these wonderful pastimes, and just Krishna's crawling. People, here it's mentioned Param Brahma. Generally, people are interested in the impersonal feature of the Lord, but as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, right, that's not an easy project. right? Klesho dikataras tesham abhyakta sarta chetasam. To remember an to think of something impersonal, Krishna says, is trouble. Dukkha, trouble, and more trouble, he says in that verse. So it's interesting, the author gives this kind of reference to this Param Brahma, and Prabhupada mentions that this kaivalya of merging into the impersonal Brahman is like hell. Kaivalyam narakayate, Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur says, Kaivalyam narakayate, this wanting to merge into that is troublesome at the very best. So the author says, I'm just thinking of Nanda Maharaj, how wonderful he is. He can just think in trance day and night about Krishna crawling on the ground. There's nothing else to think about. Just thinking how Krishna's crawling, how Krishna's playing, about his pranks. Sometimes he becomes disturbed by his pranks, but it's all good. And so in how he's, crawling on his knees, he's getting a little stronger. Oh, now it's time for him to take care of the cows. And so this is the perfection of life, that he can think in this way. And this is the real Param Brahma. Krishna is the actual Param Brahma. He's this little cowherd boy. It's the source of Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Krishna is the source of the Brahman effulgence. He's the source of Paramatma. He's the source of all the Vishnu incarnations. And Nanda Maharaj can only think of Krishna. Even if he thinks by force, if he thinks of Narayan, that's transformed into Krishna. There's another story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita how the gopis were looking for Krishna. I'm sure you've all heard this. And Krishna climbed up in a tree and transformed himself into four-armed Narayan form. And they came along and said, oh, it's Narayan. Where's Krishna? They just wanted to see Krishna. But when Srimati Radharani came along, he couldn't maintain his four-armed form in her presence. He immediately became Krishna again. So this is, so wonderful. This childhood form, especially of Krishna, we can aspire. We can worship Nanda Maharaj. We can worship Mother Yashoda. We worship the gopis, the cowherd boys. These are our worshipful lords, and we worship our spiritual masters, our acharyas, so that we can think of Krishna. So that we can think of Krishna like this. This is the pure state, although it's, as we were saying, it's so difficult to think of Param Brahma, but it's very easy and pleasurable to think of Krishna's pastimes. At the same time, maybe not so easy, because we're habituated to think of other things. The mind is not pure, therefore it's not so easy to think of Krishna's pastimes. We're accustomed, the neural pathways in our brain are accustomed to working in certain ways, and we always, think of different things, so many different things. The Yoga Sutras actually mention the general state of mind, especially now in Kali Yuga. We've got special devices to help us, called phones, to help us not think of Krishna at all. So this time that we have together to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and just allow it to touch our hearts, allow these stories to touch our hearts are so important, because we go away from here and then our day starts, right? And then the mind goes. Where does it go? Just where does it go? The day goes by, and do we think of Krishna? How much do we think of Krishna? Although this is Krishna's emphatic instruction, right? Manmana bhavamad bhakto. Just think of me. Prabhupada one time said, you think of so many nonsense things, why not think of Krishna? So, but it actually takes some concentrated endeavor. If we have a nice sadhana, if we sit with devotees and hear, if we can hear our rounds, then we've got a fighting chance to think of Krishna. But it actually takes a concerted effort to bring our mind back to Krishna again and again and again. And when we notice that our mind is on something undesirable, we can bring it back. I started to say that the Yoga Sutras actually mention the state of mind. I forget there's a technical term for it, but the general state of, for the conditioned soul, the mind is jumping from one thing to the next. And we think of one thing for a moment, and then we think of something else. Especially with cell phones, there's always something beeping at us, right? Oh, maybe this. And the mind is always disturbed. The mind is never pacified. Actually, we can feel, isn't it, as we hear these topics, that it's pleasing to the mind, isn't it? It's like the mind becomes happy hearing about Krishna. But normally the mind is always kind of disgruntled, not happy. And it's described that when the only bit of happiness the mind gets in conditional life is when it's jumping. Because when it jumps to that next topic, we think, oh, maybe this next thing will bring me happiness. And we're there for a few minutes and then we jump on. And we've got cell phones to help us with this. I heard something recently. You've heard of Spotify?
Yeah.
You know what that is? So you can click on something and listen to it, and then click on something else when you get bored. Anyway, they say that the average skip time on Spotify, anybody, any guesses? Somebody clicks on something, and then before they...
10 seconds?
Huh?
10 seconds?
7. Yeah. 7 seconds before they're bored and skip onto something else. That's the average. That means probably it's more like 2 or 3 for most people. So we can understand that the mind is formidable. Is formidable, and we're never satisfied with this. So we can practice in this way, thinking of Krishna's pastimes, and let those enter our heart. And the more we hear about Krishna, the more we think about the great devotees of Krishna, thinking of Krishna. One time, Srila Prabhupada, one of his disciples asked him, well, what at the time of death if I can't think of Krishna? And Prabhupada said, well, you can think of me thinking of Krishna. So somehow or other, think of Krishna, think of Krishna, think of Krishna. And we can always chant Hare Krishna. And gradually the heart becomes softened. It takes time. But gradually the heart becomes softened, and then we become attracted to these topics the same way we were attracted to other things, and enter into this Leela. Actually, the way that we enter into Krishna Leela is just through the ears, through hearing these pastimes. So, Hare Krishna. That was kind of what I was thinking about saying. Is there any discussion on any of these points? Any thoughts? Yeah, Guruseva.
It's easier to think of the devotees.
Yeah.
You can see them, you can touch them, you can see what's happening.
That's a nice point.
And we can relate to them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I don't think too much about Krishna.
But we think about devotees. This is a nice point. You heard this? Heard what she said? We can always think about the devotees. There's actually a famous verse, if I can remember it. I can't think of the Sanskrit right now. Prasangam acharam pasham atmano kavayovitu. It says that learned people have concluded that attachment to material things is the greatest entanglement for the material soul. This prasangam acharam pasham atmano kavayovitu. Those who are learned have concluded this is to be attached to material things is the greatest entanglement. But Saeva sadhushu krito. That same attachment, when applied to devotees, moksha dwaram apavitam. It opens the door of liberation. So that's a very nice point. That's also here, this Nanda Maharaj, right? And it's not only Nanda Maharaj, we can become attached to sadhus, to devotees. This is a great fortune. Actually, if we can just learn to love the devotees, our life is perfect, isn't it? If we just love devotees, if we just care about devotees, then we know Krishna will look after us. So nice. Yeah, thank you for that. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, even to like and or to love.
To like it, to love. Well,
Yeah, we love devotees.
huh?
We love devotees. We are here for because we love devotees, even if sometimes we like them also, and sometimes we don't like them.
And we don't like them.
But we love them.
But we love them. Yeah. Yeah, often we think about that the relationships that we're building with the devotees are actually on the transcendental platform. They're very special. We would never know each other, right? And if we did, we probably wouldn't like each other. But we're here because of Srila Prabhupada, because of, we want to become devotees of Krishna. So we don't necessarily even share common modes of nature or, generally if you see some organization, you see that there's kind of a common mode of nature and they like certain things and they somehow or other get along based on that. But we've got none of that. But we've got our attachment to Krishna. So, yeah, we love devotees, but we don't always like them. That's fine. Sometimes being with devotees is therapeutic. Anybody feel that? It's a little... Huh?
Thérapeutique.
Yeah.
Thérapeutique.
Yeah. Therapeutic, yeah. Pulls the thorns from the heart by being with devotees. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Sometimes there's devotees who isolate themselves from devotees in general.
I'm sorry, what first?
Sometimes there is devotees who isolate themselves.
And
Isolate.
yeah.
Isolate themselves. Other devotees, would you say that this is something which not help the devotees when this happens?
Well, you know, each person is individual, and you know, it depends. Ultimately, it's definitely not helpful. Definitely not. Ultimately, we want to be able to live with devotees, and we'll be able to live with devotees nicely if we actually develop humility. That's the key. The difficult thing. If we actually develop humility, we'll be able to live with devotees. But at the same time, there's so many circumstances in people's life. You know, we can't speak for every situation. I've known of people that had very, very difficult time in the association of devotees for whatever reason, and they just had to pull away for some time, and maybe that was necessary for them for the time. I wouldn't want to judge that, but ultimately we want to find devotees that we can associate with. Actually, Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavatam, in one purport, Srila Prabhupada says that if someone's trying to be Krishna consciousness and be aloof from the society of devotees, I think he says they're living in hallucination. Is that right? We can't actually be Krishna conscious without devotees. I mean, we read these stories, right? Krishna's not alone. He's got his cowherd boys. So here's our practice ground, learning how to love devotees. But we should, as Prabhupada said, we shed gallons of blood to make one devotee. So somehow or other, even if a devotee separates himself or something like that, we should always try to give them association if we're able. Any other thoughts on this? You've probably experienced this, so great souls, yeah, probably.
I have a wonderful experience about that.
Mm.
At one point I had to, somehow I lost the Devotees Association, but somehow I realized how much it was difficult. And of course my mother was very sick, I had to take care of my mother passed away. But I all the time pray, I increased my japa, I was chanting more. I said, I couldn't believe how Maya got me. I couldn't believe, so I became extremely strict. I said, I must come back to Devotee Association in his lifetime. I must come back to Devotee Association in his lifetime. I was chanting 32 rounds every day. Wow. I was no internet, no television, no radio, no newspaper.
Wow!
No money. Wow! 32 rounds. I was cooking, I was chanting, listening bhajan while I was cooking, listening lectures while taking prasad. I work 1 or 2 hours a day as a teacher, as a tourist guide. And I said, no, it's not possible. And finally, I had to take care of my mother somehow. And I came back again. But it's not. So. I try in English to explain. We should not take it for granted.
Yeah.
The Devotee Association is something extraordinary. We shouldn't take it for granted because we can lose it very easily. If we are not extremely cautious, we should be very anxious to stay around.
Stay around. That's your takeaway from the class. Stay around.
And another thing, because I don't speak so much, but I appreciate very much because when you said our relationship based on a transcendental platform, our relationship is based on a transcendental platform. Although I was with you 31 years ago, somehow I never felt separate from you. All the time, I never separate from you and Kusharupa, because this is great of your mercy of your wife that she wrote a letter to my Gurudev to get second initiation in Laguna Beach.
Jai.
So I appreciate it's a soul-to-soul relationship, definitely. Thank you very much to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to see you. Yeah.
Well, just to come back to the verse we're quoting, Nanda Maharaj, at least sometimes he liked to isolate himself in Nandavan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, not like losing the association really, but it's natural. But sometimes we need also.
That's correct. Yeah, we also need our space.
Nandavan,
Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
We also need we need that time to be not dealing with outside influence and to just, read and study and, it's true. I think that it's an important balance. Certainly Prabhupada had that. All the devotees I know, take that time. Good point.
This morning I was listening to Shava Maharaj saying that if devotees are going away from the association of the devotees, it's not because of the philosophy, it's mainly because of devotees. But what makes them come back is devotees also.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the main character to develop is kindness, and it is very important. And he was quoting the example of how it's called, his devotee in San Francisco with the rapper
Jayananda.
Prabhu. He was thinking about one devotee who left the association of devotees and became a butcher. And although he became a butcher, he knew about that, and he went to see him.
Wow.
And he was not in the front shop; he was in the back shop.
Wow.
I mean, it was very dirty, but he went directly to him, and he embraced him. He said, "Wow, I'm happy to see you. That you are so nice, and that you are doing so good." And he was not mentioning any criticism or about the situation or what. He was just saying, "Oh, how do you do? I'm happy to see you." Every devotee, they were wondering where you are and when you will come back. And the devotee was so much touched that he came back into the association of devotees.
Wow, that's beautiful. Beautiful. It reminds me of, we should try to be such persons, try to create such a society. Definitely. I heard something from Rukmini Devi, and Srila Prabhupada one time he said, you should go where I haven't gone. Or so he was telling one devotee, you should go where I haven't gone. And at that point, Prabhupada was traveling all over the world, so he was thinking, well, where haven't you gone? And Prabhupada said, no, you will go into the future. Oh, that's right, you will go where I have not gone. You will go into the future. Then he said, and by your dealings, by your kind dealings with people, they will know how much Krishna loves them. That's nice. As Jayananda was one such example of that.
Should not leaders think twice before kicking somebody out of a community without even talking to them? Happened to me, Get out of here. It's a rough. Because there's other people, happily. But I never did that,
You came back.
But,
You came back.
no, I'm saying, that never even say how you doing, it's rough, good to say. Especially when there's no valid reason.
I think so, yes. We do tend to kick each other around a little bit. Yes. Anyway, yeah. Hopefully we'll mature into a more Somebody want to add something to that? Or, Kosha, you've got something on your mind. Hare Krishna.
I will say something. I think it's some personalism that we think that identify this person as the problem, so if they just go away, it won't be a problem anymore. Right? Community. That usually, even if somebody's a critic, there's some truth in their criticism. So if there can be open dialogue, Srila Prabhupada personally instituted ISKCON so that there would be open and loving communication, so that when there are problems, we can look for resolutions instead of just kicking somebody out or banishing or all of that is very immature, because it's pretending like that's the only problem. When it's usually multifaceted, all of us are pretty complicated people or humans, and we're all complicated. There's never just one side. So, yeah, that's, unfortunately, when Prabhupada was here with us, he had the ultimate authority, and he was very strong about God brothers, God sisters resolving things amongst themselves, and sometimes he had to be the one who resolved it. But there was not the mentality that, let me just kick this person out. So, it's something, like you said, in our maturity that we should go towards, but sometimes even our leaders are taking those shortcuts. So, as a community, it's really nice if there can be that open, honest dialogue, that we look for resolutions together instead of short-term so-called solutions, which are never solutions because they create more conflict in the short and long term.
Jai. Thank you. Agreed? Is that a good point? We're going, I think we're overtime, huh? So, I thank you very much. Thank you all devotees here for all the service you're doing, keeping this mammoth project going. It's overwhelming. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prabhupada Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.